what would you be if you weren't a footballer? And you replied...
A virgin.
Peter Crouch is a national treasure. Whether it's on the pitch, on TV, or becoming the most hated man in Trinidad and Tobago, he's always been a success in whatever he turns his hand to. Through his career, he's had to work his way up to become arguably England's most prolific goalscorer, Iniesta's idol, and most recently, a podcasting nun.
It's certainly a change of pace, isn't it?
But did Crouch just have a good touch for a big man? Or was there so much more? That's why I want to know just how good was the career of Peter Crouch. Being unable to break into the Spurs team as a youngster, Crouch had 2 loan spells in 2000 to get first team football. First at Dulwich Hamlet, which is located, well, your guess is as good as mine, and IFK Hasselhoff. He signs for QPR and then earns a move to Portsmouth. He then earns the jump to the Premier League and signs for Aston Villa for £5 million in March 2002. He fails to make the step up to the Premier League at this point. After 2 years here, including a decent 3-month loan spell at Norwich, he's offloaded to Southampton for half of what they paid for him. His career was back on the up. A great season at Southampton earned him a big move to Liverpool for around £7 million, where he broke into the England team. He had 3 seasons there, but after the signing of Fernando Torres in 2007, Crouch moved on at the end of the 2007-8 season. After 1 year at Portsmouth, he returns to where it all started, at Spurs. Some exciting nights of European football and 2 seasons later, and he moves to Stoke for £10 million and helps secure them as a top-flight club. In January 2019, Crouch moved to Burnley and received a warm welcome from the fans. This would turn out to be the final 6 months of his career, in football at least. You can now catch Peter Crouch on That Peter Crouch podcast with Tom Fordyce and the other guy.
An agent broke into that. I said, you buy one, you get Crouch free.
Crouch played enough games on loan at Norwich to earn himself a First Division winners' medal as they were promoted back to the Premier League in 2004. At Liverpool, he then won the FA Cup and Community Shield before narrowly missing out on club football's biggest prize to AC Milan as they couldn't repeat the miracle of Istanbul. He was dropped to the bench by Benitez though and only brought on in the second half. Crouch won QPR's Player of the Season and Portsmouth's Player of the Season the very next year, despite having left by March for Aston Villa. He also won Stoke's Player of the Season in his first year at the Britannia. He'd also have the 2011-12 Premier League Goal of the Season to add to that list, had it not been for Papi Cisse going to game settings, putting his shot error down to 0 and slinging one in from the touchline. Crouch's reputation as a journeyman started at birth. He was born in Macclesfield, moved to London, then to Singapore for 3 years as a toddler, then came back to the capital to grow up in West London. He grew up a Chelsea fan like his dad and was even a ball boy at Stamford Bridge. He even had a rabbit called Kerry Dixon. Growing up, Crouch would get accused of being older by the opposition parents, as they were annoyed that the tall kid had scored 5 again. His dad would take him to football matches, soccer schools and training, and helped him practice his first touch before and after school, which would one day become a staple of his game. He was with QPR from the age of 9 and had a spell at Brentford's academy too. But when some of the QPR coaching staff left for Spurs, they took Crouch with them and offered him a youth contract at 13 and then at 17 a professional contract. He couldn't get a game for Spurs, so at 19 he had spells at the aforementioned Dulwich Hamlet and IFK Hasselhoff. Where Dulwich Hamlet are now an exciting National League South side with a good little following and a cracking YouTube channel, Peter Crouch is still the biggest thing to happen to the Swedish third tier side. Pun not intended. QPR snapped him up for £60,000 as they'd been watching him at Spurs, and due to injuries to strikers like Rob Steiner and Chris Kawumia, Crouch got thrown into the first team and played regularly from then on. Having been thrown into the first team at QPR, Crouch was an instant hit scoring 12 goals in all competitions and winning their Player of the Season. But it wasn't enough to save them getting relegated to the second division, League One, after coming 23rd with a heavy goal difference. Crouch was sold to fellow strugglers Portsmouth for £1.5 million, who had found it hard to ship goals themselves that season. As QPR were in financial trouble as well, it made sense to all parties involved. Harry Redknapp has always been a name closely associated with Crouch, followed by the debate of whether he signed the striker or sold the striker more. Well, Harry became Portsmouth's Director of Football on June the 21st, 2001, and they signed Crouch on the 4th of July, which I'm counting on our leaderboard as a signing. He scored 18 in 37 league starts with help from Croatian midfielder and Fratton Park legend Robert Prosinecki. But as the team was struggling, Harry took charge and became manager in late March. Now on Monday the 25th, Harry takes over. On the Tuesday, Crouch makes his England under-21 debut against Italy. He didn't score, but he did come on and display that nice first touch as they couldn't find a winner against a future Ballon d'Or winner and 2 portions of macaroni. Then on the Wednesday, Harry sells into Villa, clearly not thinking of getting that band together with Defoe and Cranchar yet. They eventually avoided relegation by outscoring those around them, and Redknapp kept to his word by using the £5 million to rebuild the squad, as they topped the division that very next season. After scoring on his debut and playing alongside Defoe for the first time in England's under-21s, Crouch failed to make an impact in his first full season. Although Dion Dublin took him under his wing, he scored none that season and admits to feeling technically but not physically ready for the Premier League just yet. His second season started with a 3-month loan spell in the First Division with Norwich, signing alongside Darren Huckabee, who would end up finishing as their top goal scorer and staying for another 5 years. Crouch wasn't actually the tallest player in the league at this point, as made clear by ITV East Anglia's rather unprofessional bar chart. He did well there, being involved in 7 goals, but upon returning to Villa to fight for a starting place, the competition for attacking options had grown. What Crouch offered as a tall target man was surplus to requirements. As you can see from this goal montage, that despite being half a foot shorter than Crouch, Juan Pablo Angel had the aerial presence of an Apache helicopter.
Well, I told you that boy could spring.
With Angel showing the form he once did at River Plate, alongside other options like Darius Vassell and Dion Dublin, Crouch was sold to mid-table Southampton. Crouch's life at Southampton didn't start so smoothly, with the club finding themselves in the relegation places where neither Paul Sturrock nor Steve Wigley could improve their form. Crouch had 1 goal for the Saints before his old boss Harry took over in the December, who promised that him and Kevin Phillips would be starting every game in some classic little and large partnership if they managed to stay fit. Crouch got 15 goals after Redknapp's arrival that season, 11 of which in the league, but it wasn't enough to prevent relegation and Harry went back to Portsmouth that following Christmas. Not before Crouch was sold to Liverpool though, after attracting the Merseyside Giants with his impressive second half of the season form. Crouch's move to Liverpool coincided with his first call-up to the England squad, but he had an unfortunate start to life at Anfield. With Benitez trying to play him out wide, a position that was alien to Crouch, he had a 19-game, 4-month goal drought, including a missed penalty that he took off of Steven Gerrard before scoring twice against Wigan. He started scoring for England, including the first appearance of the robot against Hungary and a hat-trick in a friendly against Jamaica, where he could have had 4, but he penenkered a penalty over the bar. He helped Liverpool to the 2006 FA Cup, setting up Gerrard's rocket after he had a goal crossed off for offside. Crouch then made appearances for England during the 2006 World Cup group stage, but after accidentally pulling on Trinidad and Tobago defender Brent Sancho's hair to score the opener, he earned himself the title of the most hated man in Trinidad and Tobago. In 06-07, Crouch was at the peak of his powers. He started this season off by scoring the winner against Chelsea in a 2-1 win to lift the Community Shield. Crouch was their top goalscorer in all competitions that season with 18, 6 of which in a Champions League run that took them all the way to the final, only being outscored by the eventual winner, Kaká, who was unplayable that season. Crouch was then, for some reason, left out of the first 11 in the final as Benitez played a lone striker and Dirk Kuyt instead. Crouch was also racking up goals for the national side, being England's top goalscorer in an unsuccessful Euro 2008 qualifying campaign. Crouch equalised in the final game against Croatia, which would have been enough to send England through. But Croatia scored again, and that meant the Wally with the Brolly and his England team would not be going to the tournament. With the arrival of Fernando Torres, Crouch was mainly used as a sub in the league, and Torres and Kaut occupied the first 11 in the Premier League and Champions League. Crouch was preferred in the FA Cup and League Cup, leading him to look elsewhere for regular game time. He was signed by Redknapp's Portsmouth in July 2008, off the back of their FA Cup triumph, and the band were together for the first time, albeit for 3 months before Harry left for Spurs. Crouch had another great season there, finishing as their top goal scorer with 18 goals in all competitions. And as Defoe had joined Redknapp at Tottenham by January, it fell to Crouch to make the difference in the points that he won, meaning they weren't battling relegation. Crouch went back to familiar territory in the form of his first club Spurs, and his old manager, Harry Redknapp. He signed alongside Nico Kranjčar, and the band had reformed in North London 1 year after its inception. Crouch formed a brilliant little and large partnership with Defoe, both of which were England international second choices to Wayne Rooney. Spurs were sitting in 4th all year, and Crouch's famous headed winner against Man City secured them Champions League football for the first time, and European football for the first time since 1962. This caused the team to celebrate by pouring water over Harry in the post-match, and for David Bentley to dance around in his pants. Their Champions League campaign the next season was a memorable one, but not just because Gareth Bale was bursting onto the scene and ending Brazilian careers. Crouch was the focal point of the attack, often being played up top on his own. They topped a group that included Inter Milan, and Crouch scored the only goal across the 2 legs against AC Milan in the round of 16, before Real Madrid proved too much. He was still in the 2010 World Cup squad due to these performances, but was only used off the bench in a rather miserable campaign. Then, on deadline day in August 2011, Stoke broke their transfer record to bring Crouch to the club, in a deal that can only be described as by the skin of their teeth. Signing for 10 million, Crouch was the perfect accompaniment to Pulis and the long Delap throw-ins, which were so infamous Stoke's opponents would sometimes purposely clear the ball out for a corner because they were so rattled. Crouch ended his first season at Stoke as their top scorer and won their Player of the Year, but despite this and backing from the manager, he didn't get into England's Euro 2012 squad and wouldn't feature in a 3-lion shirt again. Crouch was Stoke's top goal scorer in 3 of his first 6 seasons at the club, and the 2012-13 season started brightly, until Newcastle's Fabrizio Colacini knocked out his front teeth in a tackle, and his goal scoring was, let's say, a little toothless for the rest of the season. Mark Hughes took over and secured the club as a mid-table Premier League team for the next 4 years, even when Crouch was struggling for minutes with a groin injury in 2015 and 16. At the start of 2017, he scored his 100th Premier League goal and brought back the robot to celebrate, where he was greeted by some very happy fans. Stoke were relegated at the end of the 17-18 season, and Crouch followed them into the Championship. In the January, he was swapped with Sam Vokes as he signed for Burnley. Sean Dyche wanted him as a game changer off the bench, as he was often used with Mark Hughes in the later years at Stoke. But the lack of game time encouraged Crouch to retire at the end of that season, calling a close on a career of a man that could certainly do it on a wet, windy Tuesday night in Stoke. It's well known that Crouch has the record for the most Premier League headed goals with 53, making up almost half of his top flight goals, which he looks thrilled about. His international scoring record is something to be applauded, having the best goals per 90 minutes record in a 3-lion shirt, seeming to benefit a little bit from being utilised as a substitute. Lineker made a point on his podcast that England fixtures are easier nowadays, and he'd be right. The average world rankings of teams he scored against was 38th, which is like scoring all your goals against a modern-day Russia. Crouchy's is 62nd, which is like scoring against Honduras, but it's still better than Wayne Rooney's, which is 66th, and he doesn't have the scoring rate that Crouchy had. At Portsmouth, the fact that Crouch is a 20-year-old English striker with a scoring rate of 1 in 2 probably justifies that £5 million price tag to Aston Villa, although £5 million was quite a lot at the time. But at Aston Villa, he isn't quite ready for the step up physically, which is why you see this big dip in goals. His season at Southampton is probably the most impressive of his career, considering that most of his goals were scored after Harry arrived in December, which is what earned him that big move. He does well at Liverpool despite that goal drought at the start and Fernando Torres coming in his third season. And at Portsmouth and Spurs he does pretty well, but in his second season at Spurs he looks like he's reserving his best performances for Europe. The first 3 years at Stoke he's a regular starter, and the 4 years after that he's starting about half the time. In these years it meant the teams wouldn't set up to play against Crouch and his aerial threat, so that meant he could have more of an impact when he came off the bench. The 15-16 groin injury is quite obvious, and the season they introduced XG, or expected goals, in 2017-18, Crouch outperformed his XG that year. Now, to quote Crouch himself, you become a football player because you love football. And Crouch is an example of what you can achieve if you want something enough and you work hard enough to make it happen, that you can do whatever you set your mind to and rise to the top. Good touch for a big man? Good touch, full stop.
Fun and games.
If you like this, then do subscribe for more, as every video has the same 5-part format on a different former player. Give me your Crouch rating and who you want to see next down below. I'm going to give Crouch a rating of 75 and he's going to join Heskey on our scale. So thank you for watching and enjoy Crouch's top 5.
Fabio Aurelio and Crouch! What a header that is! Liverpool double their lead emphatically.
Ball at the minute. This is Bellamy and they have men over here, and this is Risa. Chance, brilliant. Peter Crouch. The game could be over within a few minutes of the start of the second half. Very clinical indeed from Liverpool Football Club. Peter Crouch celebrates his birthday with his 13th goal of the season.
Sharana. Pennant first time in, can't let it run. Peter Crouch, hat-trick chance!
What a goal. Fantastic hat-trick by Peter Crouch. The game is now definitely over for Arsenal and Liverpool have won it. But let's just have a look, and we can see this again from Peter Crouch. Just look at that little flick through his legs, sets himself up. For me, that's the best of his goals. Terrific goal.
A classic hat-trick as well. Right foot, header, left foot.
Needs a good ball. This is Crouch. Magnificent goal. It is just Galatasaray all over again, isn't it? Wonderful finish by Crouch. What a wonderful way to start the new year.
One at Man City was my best goal. Obviously, I flicked it on. Jermaine Pennant has won a header, which he didn't win too many. But yeah, and obviously once it's dropped, I tried it at Blackburn, I think 2 weeks before, and it hadn't come off. And the keeper had saved it. But that was you don't catch hold of them that well all the time. So especially the fact it was on TV and it was against Joe Hart, obviously, and Man City were Man City at the time. So it was a great occasion.